started out as a beautiful day, beautiful sunrise, and when we left home, it was still, wind hadn't got up. I think the wind's getting up as we go, and I know we've had lots of people that have had wind problems in the last week or so, and hail. Anytime it gets up over 100 miles per hour, that's a pretty strong wind. What'd you say, that was like a Class 3 hurricane or something like that? So we hope everybody's doing well. We've been studying the book of Philippians, and we have seen how Paul emphasizes things. He does it in different ways, and sometimes, he'll start in the beginning, and he'll do some more, and he'll come back, and he'll come back to it again, and he'll just kind of loop to make those things important. And as we've looked at this, we've seen how he talks about living a life of joy. That if we're living the Christian life, it should be one of joy. And to invoke prayer. Always, if we are in the Christian life, we see in the Philippians how often it is that either Paul is praying for people or he's encouraging people to pray. It happens over and over. And then also we saw last week gospel living, that we live our lives as we're living the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we're going to continue today to look at Philippians. But we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to look at how he emphasizes things. I was thinking this week, and for the month of March, I'm going to be in Panhandle doing trials every week. It's going to be an interesting month. We're going to do several trials. That's the way it worked out that we're going to be there. And when I do a trial, I always tell my jurors that if you want to take notes, you can. But you don't have to. And sometimes I'm always interested to see how many jurors take a bunch of notes and how many don't. And now we collect them. We don't let anybody read them, but it's just interesting. Sometimes it seems like they write down everything. And then there'll be somebody else that doesn't take a note. And I tell them that's up to you. Some people do better by just listening. Some people do better by taking notes. But I was thinking about if you were in the city of Philippi and you were wanting to hear Paul's letter read, most of the people couldn't take notes because they didn't know how to read or write. And so they had to listen. They had to listen. And so I was thinking about what it would be like if you were a citizen of Philippi and you got invited to come listen to Paul's letter. And that's kind of what we're going to do this today. We're going to take the idea that we are a citizen of Philippi and we've been invited to hear the letter. It's only going to be a portion of it. We're going to look at Philippians chapter 2, 1 through 8. That's where we're going to be today. But we're going to kind of try to look at it from the aspect, if you were a citizen there who had been invited to come and listen. And so that's the way we're going to do it. I know it's a little different, but we're going to do it this way. Now I'm going to be this chatty citizen of Philippi. And I'm going to talk a lot, which happens sometimes. And I know we were here in the middle of a sermon or middle of a reading, and it would seem like you're kind of disrupting everyone else. There have been times when you go to a play or a show or something, and there'll be somebody there that's reciting the lines before they happen. That they start laughing before the punchline. That they may start saying the punchline before it's given. And the people that are sitting around you kind of look at you a little askance. Now, I've actually experienced sitting next to that person before, but that's kind of what we're doing. Is we're just going to have a little conversation here. And I am a citizen of Philippi, and I'm inviting you to go with me to this reading with Paul's letter to the Philippians. Now let's go. We're going to go down here. We don't want to get there early. We don't, because if we do, guys like us, they'll probably want us to go down there to the front. We don't want that. We want to just sneak in, sit in the back, and then if these Christians start doing anything weird, we can just sneak out. I've heard that these guys, the story is they drink blood. I don't want to have anything to do with that. So we'll be ready to leave if it has something happen. So we'll go in and we'll sit down and we'll just listen. My buddy, this is his house, and he's invited us here to hear it. And so let's hear what they've got to say. So, if there is any encouragement in Christ, if there's any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any sympathy or affection. What is this? Any? This must be an important point. this guy's going to emphasize it that much, any, he must be coming to an important point. Any encouragement, any comfort, any participation, any affection and sympathy. Yeah. I know what's coming next. What's coming next is this guy's going to say, you need to do what I tell you to do. You need to do it how I tell you to do it. And you need to do it when I tell you to do it. I've heard this stuff before. And that's what's going to be coming next. You need to do what I tell you to. You need to follow the rules. And then me and you, we know what these holy men are like, these traveling holy men. You know what's next. The next thing he's going to say is, and you need to send me some money. I got these guys figured out. This is just like all the other traveling holy men. Complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord, and of one mind. That really wasn't what I was expecting, was it? I was expecting it to be, do what I tell you to. And he tells us to be of the same mind, the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. That sounds like unity. That doesn't sound right. How in the world are we going to have unity? Look at this building we've got in here. We've got women in here. We've got slaves in here. We've got Lydia over there as one of the richest women in town. We know that she is one of the business women. And they've got guys like us. And they want us to be of one mind. You know, those three guys over there, I see them every day down at the table of knowledge down at the square. And one of them's going to be arguing that the right political system is going to be the old Greek system of complete democracy. The other guy's going to say the same thing every day, that no, we need to have a representative democracy. And the third guy's going to say, no, let's go back the way it used to be with Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander when we ruled the world. They'll say the same arguments every day. And we expect all these people to get along? Yeah, it's a little weird. I'm not so sure this is what we want. Let's listen a little more. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. What in the world are they talking about? Again, that may be good for this slave woman here. She needs to consider others more important than herself, but not guys like me. Do they know who they're talking about here? My great-grandfather was a soldier of Julius Caesar. He was with Julius Caesar when he defeated all the Gauls. And when they came back to Rome, he was one of those soldiers who defeated Pompey and his massive armies. And then after those rascals assassinated Julius Caesar, my great-grandfather, he joined up there with his nephew Octavius. And he was one of his soldiers who defeated all those rebels. And then after he had defeated them all, he awarded my grandfather, my great-grandfather, this farm that my father's out there right now. This part in here in Philippi was a reward for his service to the emperor. And the emperor himself gave it. And now they're trying to say that we want to count other people's as more significant than ourselves? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. I'm not so sure about this Christian stuff. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. What are they talking about here? They're saying this guy, this Christ guy, was a God and was up there in heaven with the creator of the universe. And he gave that all up to come down here to be a man like we are? That doesn't make sense. I know power. I know what it's like to have power. You've all seen that statue there that we see of Claudius, the Emperor Claudius. He's got this woman down here, this written woman, by the hair, got her neck exposed, he's got his knife up here ready to cut her throat. That's power. That's what power is. And he's climbing the ladder of success and climbing the ladder of honor. And then when he died, what did the Senate do? They voted him in to be a God, not the other way around. We want to climb up the ladder, not the other way around. This doesn't make sense at all. Doesn't make sense. But you know, my buddy, he's told me a story about this Jesus guy. Told me a story about one time the people brought him a woman that had been caught red-handed in adultery. And under Jewish law, you're supposed to stone that woman. Not only her, but the man too. That's the law, that's the rules. And he tells me that Jesus took those people and looked at them. And he said, whichever one of you is without sin, let you cast the first stone. And he had mercy on that woman. Instead of showing his power by cutting her throat, to showing how powerful he was, he showed mercy. And he let her go. That's kind of funny. And you know, when they were saying, consider others better than yourself, my buddies told me another story. Y'all remember, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago, this fellow Paul that wrote this letter, him and his buddy Silas, they came to town. Came here to Philippi. And they just made everything an uproar. Everybody was upset. It was going on. And there was that one little slave girl that she had that spirit in her. And they cast her out. They pulled that spirit and cast it out, and she was normal. But everybody got mad at her. The whole city's mad at them. And they took them in front of the judge, and the judge ordered them beaten with rods. And so Paul and Silas are beaten with rods, and then they say, put them in the deepest dungeon. You know, the guy that we're here with, my buddy, this is his house. He works for the Roman jail. And he was the one that they said, you put them in the dungeon. And he does. And he locks the door. And so here they are, in this dungeon. They've just been beaten by rods. They may be going to be executed the next day. They don't know what's going to happen the next day. And you know what they were doing all night? They were singing. And they were praying. That's weird. I don't know how that works. But in the middle of the night, my buddy is there, and he's guarding them. Got the doors locked. Earthquake occurs. And he looks around, and all the doors are open. And these guys could just walk out. And so he gets ready to kill himself. Because he knows that the people, the powers that be, had told him that you got to keep these guys secure. And if they walk out, they're going to kill him. And they may torture him. So he decides that rather than being tortured to death, he's going to kill himself. But just as he's about to do it, Paul says to him, this guy Paul that wrote this letter, he says, don't do it. We're all still here. So maybe that's an example of thinking of others and putting others before ourselves. That he had an opportunity to walk out and gain his freedom. And instead, he stayed. And my buddy lived. And he became a Christian. And we're in his house today, listening to this. So maybe I need to look at this again. Maybe there is something to it. This idea of unity, I'm still not sure what that means, though. Because, you know, when I go out in the city, I see these Christians, and they treat each other well. They treat other people well, but particularly themselves. And like I say, if you look at this bunch. We got that foreigner, and we got Lydia, we got the slaves, we got me and you, we got all of us, male and female, and Jews and Gentiles and foreigners and slaves, all being treated the same, all being together. So I don't know about this unity, but maybe it's not that they all agree. Like we said, those guys, those old men that sit there and argue all the time, every day about politics, we know they don't agree on much of anything. But yet they're here together. And we know that the rich and the poor, vast differences here in Rome. And yet they're here together. So maybe unity is not meaning that everybody agrees on every point. But maybe it means that they are unified in their commitment to Christ. And maybe it means that they are unified in their commitment to one another. As opposed to just having power, they are one together. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. That's what my buddy tells me. Maybe there's something to this. You know, I know that people sometimes want to join them. And they have what they call baptism, where people are baptized and then they're raised to a new life. That's what they tell me. It's not just like if you go down here to join the cult of Mithras, or maybe Apollo or something, where, yeah, they have a secret rite, and they teach you a secret handshake, and you got to come every 2 or 3 weeks and have a celebration. But it really doesn't affect your life. It's just what you do every once in a while. But my buddy says that's not the way it is with this Christian way, that you follow Christ's way. Is that when you are raised, you continue to walk every day, becoming more and more like Christ. That it's not a one-time thing. It is more something that takes your whole life in order to do that. That you're being slowly transformed to look like Christ. Being slowly transformed as he was emptied. It tells us there that he was emptied and came. And we are being filled with Christ. That's kind of a little different. Maybe there's something to this Christianity. Maybe when we look at all these people here, of all these different backgrounds and sexes and nationalities and races, and they can all meet here together, maybe there's something to that. And maybe there's something to treating others as more important than ourselves. Maybe there is. Because they say that if you want to join them, all you have to do is come. They say that if you have a problem and you want some help, all you have to do is come. And that's kind of where we are today. If anybody wants to take on the life of Christ, if anybody wants to begin that walk, today's the day to do it. Or if there's something you need right here in this church in heaven that will make your life go better, that we can do, let's remember that we have unity. We have unity here. And I have here unity through diversity, which is an old Thomas Campbell quote. Not that we consider Thomas Campbell more important than anybody else, but it was his idea way back there in the old days. Unity through diversity. And if anybody has a need, if anyone has something we can help you with, if you would come as we stand and as we sing.